Now, if you were to ask me to think of the first terrifying idea to pop into my mind, I'd immediately say the mental image of Jason in a pair of bathers. If you ask me about the second most terrifying thing, I'd probably go with succumbing to madness. And what better way to simulate losing your marbles with the appropriately timed release of Call of Cthulhu on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or PC? Developed by Cyanide Studio, a French developer who has had a reputable history in pen and paper RPG to game adaptations, Call of Cthulhu follows the tale of Edward Pierce, a down-on-his-luck private investigator fresh from the Great War, who was sent to the quiet little fishing town of Darkwater to investigate and clear the name of his client's daughter, who was accused of murdering herself along with her family in a sea of flames. And as with most works based on Lovecraft, this town isn't exactly what it seems, and malignant forces await Edward to punish his inquisitive nature. Now, a lot of Edward's detective skills are put to the test in some really nice environmental design and architecture. The areas explored are all dilapidated and neglected, reflecting the mental state of Darkwater's inhabitants and absolutely nailing the tone that most Call of Cthulhu games like Prisoner of Ice or Shadow of the Comet has completely missed. And as such, it offers a much better perspective on how humanity would respond to horrifying creatures invading reality from other worlds. Audio cues tend to blend in with the overworld sounds, so as your character becomes more unhinged throughout the game, you're constantly second-guessing if you've found trespassing by a guard, you come across an important item, or if that high-pitched ringing in the distance belongs to something that wants to eat your face off. And whether or not those little details were intentional on the developer's part, it still works considering the subject matter at hand. Though if we are speaking intentional design, Edward may be a war veteran, but he still prefers to solve matters diplomatically. And if you're expecting gameplay along those stylings of Dark Corners of the Earth, where it's a bit more shooter-centric, you're going to feel very left out. The majority of progression through Call of Cthulhu is through dialogue, skill checks, and investigation, which is where most of the pen and paper mechanics kick in. Upgrading Edward as you investigate and level up allows you to affix skill points into extra dialogue paths, picking locks, forcing doors open, finding hidden items, and plenty more. Some skills can only be increased by investigating environmental factors like, consulting medical books, or even texts of the occult like the Necronomicon, which often come at the cost of the character's sanity and how he approaches some decisions later on in the game. Unfortunately, the integration of these pen and paper mechanics are fairly shallow, as most investigative sequences unlock most of the useful dialogue options, and the stat exclusive options merely serve as flavor text. Spots where you can do a strength skill check to force open a drawer can be solved through finding a key in the room next door, so the payoff of investing in a particular build or a particular aspect of Edward never really seems worth it in the long run. So thankfully, investigating and the stealth sections are far more interesting, as each scene just thrusts you into a diorama that changes frame by frame as you interact with it, while sneaking and peeking around assailants works as well as it needs to. And that said, for all the praise I've made about the presentation so far, it can be quite inconsistent thanks to some of the strangely animated character models, a fair amount of typing errors in the subtitling, and really jarring switches between full motion video and scenes rendered in real time. And it can really drag you out of what is a pretty immersive game for its scope and budget. Despite that, there are certain attentions to detail I found absolutely masterful, like triggering Edward's shell shock and PTSD if you stay in closets or tiny vents for too long, or if you're looking directly at creatures and it reduces your overall sanity level. And while I may seem totally conflicted here, but I'd still say Call of Cthulhu is worth checking out. While it is pretty rough around the edges, I don't consider my time with it as a negative experience because it manages to hit tones and thematic notes that other cosmic horror-themed games have yet to match. So if you're looking for a scare, I can guarantee it's just as terrifying as visualizing Jason in a pair of bathers. Oh God, I stared into the abyss and it's staring right back at me. Oh my God,